Yes, I ignored it. Nico.
I did.
Yeah. Oh, Nico.
Rescued by the hero.
James, Baquedano connection.
Bloody hell.
How you doing? We're here, Nico. You and I.
Great. Okay.
We are not this way. We're here,
Yes.
and we are facing this dot. Here. So that's the camera. And so we sit here and we can see. I just put my bits and pieces here for the time being. And I brought the belly to show.
Yes.
And I don't think I would need these glasses, only the reading. So this is my list of thank yous. You may not need to thank you, but
I don't think so.
you're completely one-hourness.
Cool.
So we are here.
So I need to see by that camera.
So when yes, so I'm gonna move a little bit, not a lot because they can't see.
Are we to address the
No, we have to address the audience, but
Right.
we can also stand up, but then we have to look at the camera. Or we just address ourselves. We just look at everybody.
I like this.
It's something. Yeah, actually, we can just. But if we are talking to Susan, then
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll probably be talking, but we know she'll be talking. And my note, but something. I had it on while you were lost and about.
I went to the main Strand entrance. I didn't even notice this one as I went past it.
Too much on your phone.
Ready? The great. Let's see if it goes south.
Oh, you're. Yes. Oh, thank you for coming. Yeah, I can see you. I always find, well, they're not too big. I think they are medicines slowly. I'm still gonna go. Oh, there she is from Florida. Then, but it's and this is our great discussion that we commentated today, Dr. Nicholas James, a friend and colleague of mine. This is Dr. Tita, but I don't know your surname.
It's like Tian.
Tian, this is Tian. And Yan Chu, but she is a PhD, and you are. You are doing so this is the majority prototypes. Nico took the MA with me at the same time at the Institute of so that's how we met. In 1900. So wow. A long time. But please take your seat. I'm here. We're going to chat in a second. Just find a seat that is.
给你一个指点吧。
防御点是处在，所以我在包括里面一段时间之后，我又回到了
这个更新在我们是这个叫做它这我想，
不行。
其实还想。
I'm gonna take it. So, smile at the camera. Okay. Picture.
我都是我什么老师有点高科没的。
现在是我们，然后这个题目我想做国外几个，就是有一个有点跟国外的 sometimes 有两个小的 faces， 有一个角色的角色有一个人要讲一般的环境口语。另外一个我感觉是可能会很有兴趣，我还想找是的，这种东西。
Thank you very much.
是的。
没问题。我在地上看见三套。
Everything is right. Credit card purchases. So if you
So I guess
no, aquí se bien.
no, no.
Esas cosas no se utilizan. Pero son de sí, ahí la coordinadora de María de las cosas no se ¿cómo te llamas? Ceci. La negra la puse esta, ¿no?
Sí. 当然我是本来我看这个资料这个完全是用手机的逻辑的话，
No, yo soy una palabra que tú digas. Tú me dices el orden de los factores para los factores. No, no, just
Welcome. And afterwards, who wishes to speak?
Yeah. Oh, no, no.
I think it's Nicotiano Chelsea. And then I follow suit. So you're
所以我那个大学那个我听到是
in June.
我比较我担心本土的
Hello, everybody. Very, very glad to see all of you here with us today for the launch of this book, co-authored by our dear and frequent collaborator, Elizabeth Baquedano, and Dr. Susan Milbrath. We are very, very pleased to have this launch today. I'm very excited. We were looking forward to this book ever since we knew about it. So finally, the date has arrived. And my name is Ana Elena González-Treviño, and I'm the director of the Center for Mexican Studies at the National Autonomous University of Mexico in the United Kingdom. We have an office here at King's College London in the Waterloo campus, and we divulge Mexican culture and the work done by Mexican researchers on work about Mexico. We frequently work with the British Mexican Society, and we know that we have a few members of that society with us today. We're very glad for that. And in order to make this presentation, we are very honored to have Professor Nicholas James from the University of Cambridge, who is going to address you initially. Thank you very much, and let us go through it.
I would like just to remind everybody that we have my co-editor and wonderful friend sitting on by her desk in Florida, and it's Dr. Susan Milbrath, who has done the work with me. She has done a great deal of work, and she's a great collaborator. Susie and I go back a long way, so the meet Dr. Susan Milbrath. So Susie, say hello to the audience and to everybody here. It's lovely to have. Can you hear me well?
Can I hear you?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you sort of muffled. I'm turning up my volume. No, but that's fine. I'm here.
I just introduced you and I just
Yeah,
said
yeah,
that.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay. So anyway, this is my dear friend Susan Milbrath, and we are ready to start. So over to Nicola James.
Right. I'm not going to assume that everyone understands just what the term Mesoamerica means. So just in case some of you are not familiar with this, let me explain that it's a technical term for a region which is culturally very diverse, but throughout this diverse region, there are certain distinguishing features that mark Mesoamerica off from the rest of the world. There's a sense in which the diverse peoples of Mesoamerica perhaps have more in common with each other than many of them realize. And the most fundamental principle, perhaps, no, I'm sure, that they have in common in their cultural tradition is a principle for explaining the world that we're in, the world as they conceive it and perceive it. And this distinguishing feature is a quality that suffuses everything. It suffuses people, it suffuses animals, which is the main theme of the book that we're celebrating today. It suffuses plants as well. It suffuses lakes and mountains, and it suffuses various forms of weather as well. It is the quality of life, and it's manifested in movement. Movement in all sorts of ways, including the principle of change. So this fundamental quality that Mesoamericans recognize in one way or another is recognized in processes of interaction. That's the nature of reality for a Mesoamerican. And this is pretty difficult for a so-called modern Westerner to understand, because reality in this sense inheres in relationships and not in things as such, which to my mind immediately sets off quite an interesting conceptual principle for a series of excellent studies on what appear to be things at first sight, namely animals in this case. So because of this principle of movement, of action, of living, Mesoamericans in principle are alert observers of what is happening. And this fundamental principle is experienced then in processes, in movement, and fascinatingly, of course, it's inherently evanescent. It's fleeting. You see it, you sense it, but you can't grasp it. This is wonderfully, we've known for a long time, readers in English, for instance, through the work of Miguel León Portilla, in introducing already many, many years ago, modern translations of Aztec poetry, which express this fundamental principle of the evanescent fundamental reality. So there's great difficulty in expressing life, what fundamentally the universe is. And as we understand it these days, I hope that Dr. Milbrath and Dr. Baquedano will agree with me, we consider that Mesoamericans, certainly in the centuries ago that this book is dealing with, the period just before the European conquests of Mexico and Guatemala, Mesoamericans sought to express this principle through symbols for these relationships and these connections. This book is a very strong and a remarkably systematic attempt to demonstrate this principle through the way that Mesoamericans thought of it with the evidence of the lives of animals. It's a search for the symbolic expressions of the operation of the world. The book is suitably very beautiful. It's been produced superbly. It's even a wonderful thing to pick up. And the design is remarkably and appropriately elegant. So it's really exciting then to be with the two eminent editors of this work, Dr. Baquedano and Dr. Milbrath. It's extremely nice to see you, Susie. I think it's rather more than 30 years since we were together. Some things just don't change at all. You know, there's nothing evanescent about you at all, my dear. I'm going to invite you and any of our participants online, if such there be, to start to explore what is in this book, what the implications of it may be. But before I invite you to start that exploration, I'd like to take up the offer that Dr. Baquedano and Dr. Milbrath have made of first expressing in their own way what you're going to say. I mean, I suppose basically why you two put this book together and what you're aiming for in it. Go on, tell us. Elizabeth, do you want to start us off, and then we'll hand over to Susie.
Thank you, Nico. Thank you very much for a splendid introduction. And as you can see, Nico has it's a real black one. He who speaks, he can speak very clearly and very well. So I would like to start, first of all, by expressing my gratitude to the director of this center, Dr. Ana Elena González-Trevino, who is a representative of the National University in Mexico, in the UK. It's wonderful to have somebody who works so hard, so well, in so many different subjects. And it's only very normal to be grateful and to recognize those who work hard and who make things possible for others to enjoy and learn and make of Mexico a distinguished place and hopefully a place of knowledge too. Well, there's a lot of knowledge in Mexico, but those who are promoting the culture and the knowledge will be good. So I would like to say thank you also to the team working with Dr. González-Trevino, Angelica Villamar, Cecilia, and all the people who may not be here in this room. I personally owe a big gratitude to Nicholas James, my dear friend and colleague, who has helped me with these wonderful words to put together the volume in such decent light, and hopefully it is a very decent book. It is highly beautiful, and it is beautifully written by all my colleagues. Everyone is an expert in their own field, so it really is a wonderful collaboration. I would also like to thank the director of the chairman of the British Mexican Society, Richard Mosley, who always does a wonderful job promoting everything to do with Mexico and telling the members of what's going on and what's happening. So I would like to thank him very much for that. And Cambia Rodriguez, who is a PhD student of mine, who is also a great assistant in many ways in my courses and in other ways for her wonderful help. And somebody else is sitting here who's not in a capacity of assistant, he's just attending, but Arun was a student of mine in the MA 2 years ago. Oh, Fiona. This is our wonderful receptionist at the Institute of Archaeology. Now, it's a great honor to have you. So we are very happy to say thank you to so many people. And you know, sometimes we spend more time thanking people than actually talking about people. But gratitude is what makes us different from other species of creatures around the world. So I think we should always be grateful. I would like to thank the University Press of Colorado for offering this wonderful offer today, 40% discount on a book that is normally $113. 40% discount is a very healthy discount. And the promotion will last for 2 days. So you can buy it today or tomorrow, and I believe up to the 12th, including the 12th. So Beth Snavinich of the University of Colorado Press has been wonderful, promoting and helping with a beautiful poster. But I would like to thank, talking of poster, to Cecilia, who has done the wonderful poster that you have seen online when you registered. So she's a great designer. And so if you need a good poster, you know who to contact. And anyway, welcome everybody to this launch. I would like to start by saying that my co-editor, Susan Milbrath, who is behind me there, I don't know whether to look at the camera or whether to look at the audience or whether to look behind. But Susie has been obviously very much together with me at the heart of the operation. She has done an incredible amount of work, and she is a very good friend and a dear friend. So it's wonderful to have these people with us, and she will be explaining what our reasons for putting the volume today. Now, having said all the things, and hopefully I haven't forgotten anybody else, I would like to thank the director of the Institute of Archaeology, Professor Kevin MacDonald, as well, for helping and promoting and everything that I always see. So thank you. And now I said I was going to start, but let me tell you that in 2019, there was a conference in part of the Society for American Archaeology, and I believe it was in Washington, that we invited a group of people to participate on a session with animal symbolism. We thought it was important to present to many archaeologists from different parts of the world to listen to what we were doing and what we thought was important. So we invited specialists in the Mesoamerican field, working in different cultures on the Maya, working on codices, working on archaeology, and working on different aspects of animal symbolism. What is it that makes animals so interesting? And how do we know about these animals? What is fascinating is how the Aztecs were so observant that, for example, saw that the frogs and toads in my own chapter have a very distinctive way of getting the water or drinking water. So they don't actually drink water the way most people or animals do through the mouth, but is through the pelvic patch. So through the seat patch, they put their tummy on a spring or on water, on a puddle, and absorb the water and drink it that way. So, I saw this wonderful symbol, which is the glyph of water among the Aztecs. So when I saw that, I thought, why do they always have that symbol on the tummy as opposed to on the back or anywhere else? So I was very intrigued, and all my colleagues write, oh, with a water symbol, symbol of preciousness, symbol of fertility, symbol of all things important to agricultural societies, and so on. But I thought, no, there must be another reason. Maybe it's something to do with that part of the body that does something. I didn't have any more clues, but I started reading on books on biology and realized that frogs and toads actually have that pelvic patch and absorb the water there. So I made a connection of the glyph. This is a glyph of water, but also is a glyph that stands for preciousness or something good, for life, and so on. So I then started talking to biologists and started talking about, why are these amphibians so different to others? And I started even looking at representations of the earth and how the earth is represented like a frog. And sometimes you actually see frogs standing like that. And if you go to the zoology museum of University College, there are many frogs standing in water with the arms like this, and the legs, and that's the position of the earth as well. So the earth is in itself, the conception of the earth god or goddess is like a frog. And so we could actually talk a lot about the connection of frogs and toads with the earth, with water, with fertility. And we are actually revolving around an agriculture, mostly agricultural society. So people depend upon agriculture to survive. People depend on, obviously, like everybody else, on water. But water is particularly important in agricultural societies. So anyway, this is only one of the aspects. So it's the observation of nature. Why are creatures like frogs and toads so important? And then we can say the same, why, for example, there are so many whales represented in codices in the books of the ancient Mexicans, whether Mixtecs or Maya or peoples from other regions within Mesoamerica. Why is a whale so important, and why are there so many whales in the offerings found at the Great Temple of the Aztecs at Pueblo Mayor? So it's a connection with archaeology. It's not just the connection to do with ethnohistory and what the ethnohistorians say or what the ethnohistorical record tells us, but it's actually the connection to do also with archaeology. And of course, the most important excavations in the Americas, and I always say this, I'm not saying in Mexico, I'm not saying, in Guatemala, in the Americas, are those simply because the best archaeologist in the Americas is Leonardo Lopez Lujan. I said this in a podcast, and I asked Leonardo Lopez Lujan, the director of the site, to listen to it. And he said, I think you went out of your mind, and you are completely gaga. But while I get a little mortified, or while I get reason back, I'll say this again. He's just a superb archaeologist, and he has all the technology that is needed to make Pueblo Mayor what it is. So it's not only having the expertise and the knowledge, it's also to having the technology and having the resources that are necessary. With this talent, he gets the best from every university that he needs, whether it is Japan, whether it's Harvard University, where there is any other university in the world. So he gets the best of the best taking part in these explorations. So there's no one who has not participated in Templo Mayor who has not been under the guidance first of Eduardo Matos Moctezuma, who started the project in 1978, and he himself, Eduardo, recognizes that Leonardo has been a great archaeologist, but obviously the one who started off the excavations was Eduardo Matos Moctezuma, so we owe him a great debt of gratitude for the many years he spent putting together this project and working on the project. But now he has retired and Leonardo continues to work. So anyway, this is just to go back to why the book is important. So we have archaeologists, we have art historians, we have a combination of the two. We have a lot of art historians who specialize on the Maya, different aspects of the Maya. We also have experts on, if you like, anthropology, and this is particularly represented in one chapter written by Gabriel Vale and Alan Christensen, who have worked. Alan has worked in what Americans call the backcountry in Mexico. So this is quite interesting, the approach, how they approach to all these living cultures. The Mayas, as you know, are alive and kicking. So they are very much studied under a different light with peoples like Alan and other scholars. But that particular chapter is fascinating, and Susie will no doubt talk about that. We divided the book in two parts, so to speak, between us. So Susie did chapter 7 onwards. I did 1 to 6 in 14 chapters. So we more or less combined them evenly, but I looked after some specific papers, some specific chapters that revolve around High Central Mexico, the Aztec case, and she was working on the Maya and other cultures. Now, among the chapters where I find a particular pleasure is to refer to the work of Elizabeth Boone, who devoted her chapter to honoring our honoree in the book, Cecilia Klein, an American art historian who has a very distinguished career for many, many years, doing things that very few people have done. She's 8 feet plus. She looks 60 plus. And her brain is 6 plus in the sense of fresh. It's only, I think she's still working on a wonderful idea. She is a young person at heart. Her brain is certainly very young, very active, and she has produced a great deal of work in Aztec Mexico. However, in her last few years, she has been devoting her work and studies to the Maya area. And she doesn't even know she's a Mayanist or an Aztecologist. And I said, that's not right. You are an Aztec scholar. That's the end of that. But anyway, so she's now pretending to be more of a Mayanist, but she's not with them. She's certainly a Mayan scholar. So anyway, Nico, yeah, I was going to say, I think it's time I let my wonderful colleague give her own impression of the book and tell us what she has said.
Thank you. Well, I wanted to go back more than 30 years or so that I've known Elizabeth. We, I think, always had fun together and wanted to do things together. And finally, in 2019, we were able to organize this conference to honor Cecilia Klein, who I think is probably the premier art historian of the US, from the US, who is focusing on central Mexico. But as Elizabeth mentioned, she is not going to be kept into one little box. And so she moved her studies more and more towards a place where central Mexico and Maya meet, namely Chichen Itza. And she has actually found, I think, a very interesting solution to the Venus platform deity, who was once called Quetzalcoatl, and others have said it's an earth deity, etc. He's featured as the main character on the Venus platform at Chichen. But she describes it as a composite creature. And I think she's the first to recognize that the nostrils on this creature are not those of a serpent, but in fact, a crocodile. So she pulls apart the image and gets us to understand why a composite creature would be represented in this time and space. And there are many, many other stories to that line that we could add, but I also wanted to tell people one of the reasons that I even got into the subject of animal imagery was that as I was hired by the Natural History Museum, I early on in my job talk featured a page from the Codex Favere Meyer, page 1, that has all these plants, animals, and calendric significance in terms of it being a 260-day calendar arrayed in a cruciform pattern. And I just started to wonder whether more and more, if we understood the natural history of the area, including astronomy, which has been a field that I've been involved in, whether we might be closer to understanding how these symbols actually worked. And I think that putting all this together, is with the resources that we have in Mexico. I mean, it's amazing, the ethnohistorical records that occur. And of course, everybody probably is familiar with Sahagún, but he's got a whole volume that treats plants and animals. It's a natural history volume. And it is long overdue to be updated, because some of the notes identify animals that are not totally accurate. But he's also full of anecdotal images that are almost the kind of thing that you would write a fairy tale about, such as the coyote who was rescued by a passerby after he had a boa wrapped around his neck, and he couldn't, he was going to choke to death, obviously. The man took the boa off, and later the coyote came to thank him by dropping birds and other little animals as offerings to him, for food offerings. And you want to say that that's not real? Well, I believe probably there is some reality to that. And we're only, I think, starting to see how animals are not as separate from us as we had thought in the past. As we mature as a civilization, we start to see more and more humanity in animals, and being more humane to animals is important to us. So that's kind of one of the reasons that I wanted to do a book like this, and it has been a real treat to see how it all worked out, how so many of the chapters, I learned so much from them. The quail has already been mentioned, but he was, his skin and his feathers are dotted at like the starry night sky, and he has to be sacrificed to the sun so the sun can rise. So the stars have to die so the sun can rise. And there are a lot of different seasonal images that are mentioned in the book. I think seasonality has been overlooked also in Mesoamerican iconography, because many of these animals are only featured as a sign of a certain season. And even Huitzilopochtli, the famous Central Mexican god, the tribal god of the Aztecs, who represents a hummingbird, in a warlike hummingbird, not only does that show animal behavior because they are territorial. They're very aggressive, hummingbirds, but also they are seasonal signs because they seem to go dormant or disappear during the dry season, and then they return, when the flowers bloom and all of that. And so we need to tune in ourselves to the changes in nature, particularly in central Mexico, where there's such a profound change between the rainy season and the dry season. I recall going to Yucatan in May, and it's just like, it looks like the world is dying, and then suddenly the rains come and it's all comes to life again. So those are my feelings, that we just need to turn our attention more to seeing through the eyes of people, particularly people who are still living there, and note all sorts of animal behavior that is so interesting. And they know a lot about plants that we, as even scientists, don't necessarily know. So anyway, well, I'm going to turn it back to Elizabeth, who's capably handling this launch.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you so much. Well, I following on what Susie was saying about seasonality in Mesoamerica, there are several animals represented in the book that revolve around the idea of changes in the season. But as Susie was saying, when the rains come, everything comes to life. So that wonderful transformation is also represented through animal symbolism. For example, the snake sheds skin. So the dry skin stays behind, and the serpent stays with a new layer, with a new skin. So the earth dies, and of course the earth dies with the heat. And there's no water, everything is dry and yellow and dead. But then the rains come, and the earth acquires a new layer, a new skin, and it turns into this really lush vegetation. And that transformation is also seen through animal symbolism. So as Susie was saying about the hummingbird, how you get these birds that are dormant during a long period, but as soon as the rains come, you see these beautiful birds with iridescent feathers coming out and sucking the flowers to be able to travel for long distances with only a little bit of the sugar that they get from the flowers, and yet they can travel 500 kilometers without stopping. So that is the only animal that can actually go backwards and forwards. I'm looking for the word, and it sort of escapes me. So they hover. So you see hummingbirds also traveling long distances. They have a very, very small heart, and yet they can do so many wonderful things. They attack with the beak, but they also represent love, and they represent warfare. So hummingbirds are seen as a symbol of the most important Aztec god. Huitzilopochtli, left-handed hummingbird, is the meaning of the name of Huitzilopochtli, left-handed hummingbird, or hummingbird on the south. So Huitzilopochtli is obviously represented through that little creature that has so many abilities, can travel long distances, has a lot of strength, has vitality, can have a period of that is sort of dormant during the dry season, but then it comes back and the empire expands and it goes and makes war, and it's a period of warfare. But also these animals have a wonderful way of representing love. So and this is true also in South America among the Andean peoples. So there's a wonderful paper written by an American scholar called In Love and in Rome about hummingbirds, written by Elizabeth Benson. And I think Susie, we have a catalog with Elizabeth on animal symbolism. So Susie's organized several exhibitions at the Florida Museum, where she worked for many years. And also, I am almost being ungrateful. Susie's husband, Mark Brenner, Professor Mark Brenner, helped me a great deal with prose and getting the right image for the book and asking him a million questions. And he would come back to patiently read this or read that, or no, this is not right, this is right. So Mark is has been a great help in the book. He's acknowledging the book, but I should mention him here as well. So as Susie was saying, it's all these animals that have symbols that are so important. I could also mention some of the animals that have to do with the night and with owls and the approaching of the owls at night time and their associations with death and afterlife. So there is a great number of animals that we could talk about, but that probably is not the exercise, as there I'm sure other questions here. What do you suggest we do, Nico?
What I suggest we do is find out whether other people would like to say some things as well.
Perfect. That sounds wonderful. Thank you, Nico.
Am I right in thinking that what we've heard from Dr. Baquedano and Dr. Milbrath has stimulated observations, remarks, or any questions about this book? So, thank you, sir.
I just would like to say thank you for all the information you have shared.
Thank
I'm
you.
really looking forward to read the book. And something that grasped my attention is the idea of this every time more necessary new relationship between people and the animals. Probably there is not such a difference in terms of the biodiversity in the world. So I found really fascinating what you are sharing with us about this topic, and I think it's so timely.
Yes, it was.
For finding these new ways of relationship between us and the rest of nature. Just that comment.
Thank you very much. It's actually absolutely true, isn't it, Nico?
Absolutely. Timeliness, exactly.
Now because we have so many comments that derive from observations made by the Spaniards in the 16th century about rituals to do with things they didn't understand, and the so-called human sacrifice. So when we hear of the Aztecs, we think of people who spent their lives cutting people's hearts and chopping them into bits. So completely contrary to the nature that they had, that is really to do with looking at nature and looking at what happens during a certain period. How can they produce such a sophisticated culture if they were so busy cutting people's hearts? So, and of course, we know nothing of the hydraulic projects, we know nothing about the engineering, we know nothing about the poetry, we know nothing about the writing, but yet everyone feels an expert. Oh, you do Aztecs, oh, human parts, oh, they're just barbarians, uncivilized peoples, they're really savages. And that hasn't died out. Many people still write human sacrifice was so pivotal in the Aztec culture, blah, blah, blah. So by looking at nature, and by looking at the wonderful sculptures that these peoples produce, the realism and sophistication, we have a great expert on textiles, a world expert on textiles, Clovisea, who know so much about anthropology and about a million other things, our champion on the Day of the Dead as well, can tell us, the beauty of the bit size, how they work bit size in such perfection, using all kinds of patterns, using all kinds of designs.
And of course, the animals and the birds and the fish.
Exactly.
As you're saying.
Absolutely. So, there's
The continuity is there.
exactly. It hasn't died out. It's still there, and the food is still there, and the wonderful traditions, and even the way of constructing houses that work well and that protect you from the rain are still very much alive. Anyway, so Tian, you had a question.
Oh, yes. As Elizabeth, you know me, I'm quite interested to compare different things altogether all these years. So when we have introduction, wonderful introduction, by the way, sir, about this all-encompassed idea of understanding the world, including animals, geographic features, everything, that really reminds me of the European tradition of a bestiary. Usually happens in manuscript, which also
European tradition of
bestiary.
yes.
I think those people who know bestiary basically is Christianity stories about animals. Their behaviors are usually allegorically told. For example, the lions can give life to the little pups. So the lions is symbol of Jesus Christ, like that. And so I wonder, it's also a kind of understanding the world with animals and bring it all together into one system. So do Mesoamerican people have a similar idea of this kind of allegorical understanding of animal behaviors and indulge them with ideological, theological concept or anything on the animals? But do they actually write something like that?
What's your own answer to that? Excellent question.
Because I'm not expert, but I haven't seen any codexes like that. But could be something shared in oral traditions, taught from parents to kids, something like that. Because I think our love and observance to animals are kind of in common all over the place. So I think this could be something we can start to have a comparative study, kind of a new insight in the future.
I think there's a problem with talking of this by using the very familiar English technical term allegory here, because in terms of European languages, perhaps the most important thing to get across from the Mesoamerican tradition, to understand from the Mesoamerican tradition, is that the observer is not necessarily separate from what we're thinking about. And to use that term allegory would remind European readers and listeners about the fundamental European proposition, at least of the modern period, that the observer is separate from what we're observing. Now, this is so important, particularly when we agree that the theme of this book is so timely. The world is changing. There is an improvement growing, we might say, from this point of view, in the Western tradition. Our openness to the new science of ecology, the interconnection of everything. I'm wondering for both Dr. Milbrath and Dr. Baquedano whether they could comment on whether the expressions concerning animals in this book are expressions of philosophical principles or dogmas or what have you, or whether, to the contrary, each one of these sculptures or sculpted expressions is like those poems that Miguel León Portilla taught us to love so much, where the poets themselves, in many cases, in the ones that he's translated for us, are saying, well, you know, I'm writing a poem here, but the process of writing the poem itself is a kind of experiment. So every poem is a unique event in search of connection. What have you two got to say about this? Are we talking about, Susie, Elizabeth, are we talking about dogma and philosophical principles here? Or are we talking about, with these various works, so many of them that you're showing in the book, are we talking about a series of unique events in making these things?
Now, Susie, would you like to?
Well, I'll just briefly comment that I think it was a shared symbol system, you know, that people across Mesoamerica understood if it was a jaguar, it's nocturnal, and I would argue also sometimes lunar, underworld, etc. It was a shared symbol system because they were keen observers of animal behavior. They knew jaguars could swim, so they connected them with water. I mean, there's a water lily jaguar that's a major figure in Maya art in the classic period. I think they were trying to write poems, if you say, that were mutually understood, you know, across
Yes.
the whole of Mesoamerica. And one of the things that when I started off, because I'm interested in astronomy, I thought maybe there'd be a fair amount of animal imagery that's related to astronomy. And true, the sun and the moon are there, and Venus as Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, and then some of the stars are represented, but it's not as formalized as what you see in, for instance, the old world iconography, where you have a fair amount of mythology that connects different creatures and people. Orion placed at the opposite side of the sky from the scorpion, etc. You know, Scorpius, Orion, the constellation, Scorpius, the constellation, opposite sides of the sky in the myth. They were put there on purpose so that they would not harm each other. But that's a basic, you know, Greek myth, and we're sitting there saying, oh, it's also astronomy. I didn't see as much in what I worked with as so clearly formalizing mythology, which I was kind of surprised by. But there are, you know, nocturnal creatures who are related to astronomy, but not as much as I had thought. So yeah, I would say that there's a poetic side to what they're doing.
I don't think you should have been surprised by that.
Yeah.
And this is, to me, a new idea, and it's already a response to your wonderful book. I think you've set up, Susan, very, very well, a framework for understanding what was going on. The first thing you said was there are these standard symbols, the eagle for the sun, for example. But then you point out that, I think I quote you, actually the way these things are used are not formalized. And I'm beginning to understand from your book, they couldn't be formalized. It would be against the whole point of this outlook to have them completely standardized. The symbols need to be adequately standardized, but I think you're never going to get in the Mesoamerican tradition an equivalent of conventional European iconographic, symbolic, standard understandings. It's not going to happen with the Mesoamerican tradition.
I think I'd like to add that there are things, for example, certain ideas to do with twins as expressing Quetzalcoatl, one of the major creator gods. So in creation myths, we actually have the presence of Quetzalcoatl. And Quetzalcoatl is actually many manifestations in one entity. So we have different aspects to the one God. And one of them is actually being in charge of twins. And when you look, for example, at serpents, you have serpents that have two heads, so double-headed serpents, that they occur in nature. And then the principle of male and female, and also duality, which is such a fundamental Mesoamerican concept, appears in animal symbolism. And you know, when Tian was talking about poetry, so we can actually bring it to the compositions that have been attributed to the king and poet Netzahualcoyotl, and how he wrote about the one and only. So he didn't refer to many gods. He referred to the one and only, the creator of all living things. So you have very sophisticated ideas of gods and how they were perceived, but those features are also represented in the animals. For example, you also have lots of animals that have certain qualities that are as seen in the eyes of the poets. For example, jade or the girls could be called girls with a jade, goddesses, the goddess of the jaded skirt. So they're concepts that are represented in the animals, like I was talking about the frogs and the toads. That glyph that you saw is actually also the glyph for jade or preciousness or water. So, and there's endless allusions to jade and water and what water can do and how that jade and that precious life. When a child is born, a child, especially a little girl, is seen as a precious gem, as a precious jade or chachi. So anyway, this is just a little, so you see, Tian, that's a very interesting observation and a great question. Any other questions or comments from the audience?
Yeah, we have a question from Facebook. Alberto Medina says about the Valley of Mexico, where the cycles of rain and drought generated the adaptation of the species to those cycles of life and death, species which we can still observe in the regions of where originally the original peoples of Mexico lived, but that are now further modified by urban settlements. But these are the species that we see represented in the kind of text that you drew down from.
Thank you. That's a very good comment. Thank you very much. It's true as well. And more is happening now with constructions of trains that take us places, and you see the little animals running about completely lost of their habitat and environment because it's been demolished or transformed for the better. So anyway, we have any other comments or questions from that side of the room, or from this side of the room? Oh yes, of course, you too.
Hey, thank you for this wonderful personality event. Well, as a person who's interested in plants, so I have a question about how about plant symbolism in Mesoamerica? And another question is like, so from our like modern scientific ideas, like we separate, of course, like animals, minerals, and plants are very different, like beings for us, right? But how was the case for Mesoamericans, right? If animals and people can share a very similar source, and how do they treat as like plants and like minerals, like jade?
Yes,
Thank you.
That's a really good question.
It's excellent. Well, as Susie, if you would like to answer, I can just say that Bernardino de Sahagún, Susie referred to in his Florentine Codex. There's a whole volume 11, where he looks at nature and the animals, and he devotes a chapter to the different stones and how certain stones have certain properties and how you can find them on the ground. And those particular, for example, there's certain stones that have associations with plants as well. So, of course, they were very knowledgeable of the qualities of the different nutrients of the plants. And of course, the nature of the snake, the rattles, are very similar to corn cobs, and corn cobs are the staples in Mesoamerica. Maize is the staple. So there are certain species of snakes that are yellow, and the tail is actually very similar to a corn cob. So, so there's, you know, the association with staple, with maize, and also with this particular animal. Anyway, Sissy, would you like to add something to that?
Related to that question, but not necessarily directly answering it, in Sahagun's volume, book 11, there was some interesting, shall we say, changes in what we would call species identification, such as the flying fish, you know, actually is grouped with birds, I believe, you know, just, you know, things that we wouldn't think of, they poetically, I guess, thought of as related. And yes, sometimes the animal images do have stones attached to them, like jade, to show that they're green, you know, and color distinctions are sometimes used with symbols from other geographical or geological components. So yeah, it's a good question, because maybe it needs more study. I'm just off the top of my head thinking of one or two examples, but they don't necessarily divide up the world the way our scientists do. And of course, DNA today is making a mess of things, because it turns out some animals are more closely related to one another than our species identifications would determine.
Well,
Nico, would you like to add something yourself, or would you, if we don't have any questions or comments, I wonder if we perhaps should wrap up with your comments. Nico, if you would like to wrap up with some comments, or if there's another question or another comment, please say so. All your business. Well, if you would like to make a comment, or if there's nothing else, would you like to say a few?
Yes, I do hope that you and Dr. Milbrath haven't completely ruined your chances of lots of sales of this. Believe me, it's a wonderful book, but the two of them have told us all about it. Listen, there's even more in this book than what these two today, I almost said this evening, Susie, today, for you not evening at all. They've given us a taster of what's going on in here, and very learnedly have helped us to see what the implications of the many chapters in this book might be. And it's an opening up and not a closing up. So this is a book to acquire, definitely. But thank you, both of you, for making this so exciting. I wish that every book could have such an exciting and compelling introduction for my own part. Splendid. And thank you very much indeed.
I was going to say, can the co-editors tell us where people can find the book? Or
yes, there's actually a code. So if you, I don't know, off the top, I could give you the, and maybe we can put it in online, but I can, if you would like to email me, or Ana Elena, I could certainly send the code. Sorry, I thought the code was produced by the British Mexican Society. If any of you are members, you should have got that. For those students from UCL, or doctors from UCL, you can get it from me. Just send me an email. I've got it. Only lasts until the 12th of this month, and it's 40%. So if you would like to order it, and
Angelica can send it to all those of you who are registered.
Okay.
But if you have it on WhatsApp, I can send it to Angelica and she can project it right away.
Yes, okay. Well, I can certainly find the email from
And well, she's going to publish it as well on our social networks. If you look for Unam UK, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
oh yes, it is the code is IPS UK, customer care instagramcontent.com with promo code BAQ. Shall I give it to you? And then
No, I think it's better if you send it there. If you send
That
the
is-
entire email, no, yeah.
okay. So anyway, sorry, I just assumed that it was on the registration details. I saw several details, but Richard, being so organized, made sure that every member of the British Mexican Society got the code, and this lasts until the 12th.
See, we do have it apparently.
Okay.
I'm going to ask Angelica to project it.
So it is BA, like British Airways, Q24. So I would also like to offer my thanks again to Ana Elena González Trevino, who's been not only a great example of what UNAM UK is doing, but also she has promoted left, right, and center all kinds of subjects, not necessarily archaeology, history, or art, but the sciences as well. So
There we are. There we are.
oh, it's in there. Oh, okay. So you can see.
That looks like it's a 30-day. Oh, and that's 30-day rental. Never mind.
In the email that Beth sent to me was, but in any case, she said up to the 12th. But anyway, I'm sure that if there were people interested after the 12th, we could have a word with them again. In the meantime, we can continue the conversation in the pub. Dr. González Trevino can tell us where she has the fun after the lectures. We can follow her for a drink. And please join us all for relaxed conversation. Not that this has been unrelaxed.
Yeah,
And thank you very much to Dr. Nicholas James, who's not only a great expert on Mesoamerican cultures, and who has written books on Aztecs and Maya. So search for his books, search for his works, and thank you very much for coming to tell us all these wonderful
No,
things.
he's just an entertainer, that's all.
Then go to the George on Fleet Street, just going east on the Strands, and there is a song called the George. Yeah. Yeah. So, but there's streets down there.
Yeah, we have to consider about.
Okay, I'll let you take a deliberation.
I think I'll try. If I didn't get lost.
Yes,
Yeah.
come
Cool,
in.
right?
I'm gonna follow Ana Elena because I don't know the way my.
Bye-bye, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check out now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's, you know, I don't know where to look left, right, or center.
Too bad I'm not there to have a drink with you. That's what I feel.
Exactly. Well, we are due a few buckets by
Okay.
now.
Right, raise a glass. Thank you.
Lovely to see you, Susie. Thank you very
Lovely to
much.
see you too.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Before you go, no, well, that's not. I took a picture, but it was funny.